The first time Mara saw it, she thought she was still half asleep. It was just past dawn, that early hour when the streetlights were still on, but the sky was starting to pale, and the town looked like it was waking up slowly enough to be forgiven. She was walking because she couldn't sleep, because her apartment felt too full of quiet, because her mind kept circling the same memory like a tongue worrying a sore tooth. She turned the corner by the old rail spur, past the row of shuttered storefronts that had never quite recovered, and stopped dead. A bakery stood where nothing had stood the night before. Not a pop-up tent, not a food truck. A real building, narrow and tall like it had been squeezed into the gap between two brick walls, with a sign painted in small, careful letters. The edge of tomorrow. The windows were fogged from warmth. A soft amber glow moved behind the glass. Inside, she could see the faint shapes of shelves, jars, trays lined up like a ritual. There were no people visible, but the place felt occupied, in the way a house feels occupied, even when no one is in the room with you. The strangest part was how normal it looked. Not enchanted, not glittering, not trying to announce itself as impossible. It looked like it had always belonged there, like the town had simply forgotten it for a while. Mara stepped closer. On the door, a small hand-lettered card was tucked beneath the handle. Open at dawn. Closes when the day decides. Her breath fogged in the cold. She told herself she was imagining it, that she had just missed a new opening, that her lack of sleep was turning ordinary things unreal. Then the door handle warmed under her hand like it recognized her, and she went in. The bell above the door made no sound, but the air inside changed around her, thickening into warmth and sweetness. The smell hit first: butter, toasted flour, cinnamon, something citrusy that reminded her of clean hands and old kitchens. The bakery was narrow, deep, and quiet. The floors were old wood worn smooth. The walls were pale tile with hairline cracks that looked like veins. A glass display case ran along the left side, filled with pastries that were too tidy, too perfectly arranged, as if they were waiting to be chosen in a particular order. Behind the counter, a chalkboard menu listed items in neat writing: morning roll, citrus twist, honey loaf, salt crescent, yesterday tart, tomorrow bun. Mara stared at the last two: yesterday tart, tomorrow bun. Her skin prickled at the back of her neck, not with fear but with the sense of being quietly watched. Not by eyes, by attention. "Hello?" she called softly, because anything louder would have felt like disrespect. From somewhere deeper in the bakery a voice answered, gentle and unhurried. "Good morning, Mara." She froze. No one stepped out. No footsteps approached. The voice seemed to come from the warm air itself. "You know me," Mara said. "I know everyone who finds the door," the voice replied. "And I know what they come looking for, even when they pretend they don't." Mara swallowed. "I didn't come looking for anything," she lied, automatically. The pause that followed wasn't judgmental. It was patient, like waiting for her to tell the truth in her own time. Then the voice said, "What would you like today?" Mara's gaze slid back to the chalkboard. Yesterday, tomorrow. Her throat tightened. She thought of the memory she kept circling, the one she couldn't stop reaching for. "I don't know," she whispered. "That's all right," the voice said. "We can start small. Mara leaned closer to the display case. Each pastry had a small label card. Not flavors, not prices, just single words written in the same neat hand as the menu. Relief, regret, belonging, first love, forgiveness, goodbye, unsent. Her eyes snagged on unsent so hard it felt like her chest made a sound. She stared at it. She could see it clearly. A small bun glazed lightly, not overly sweet, braided in a way that looked almost like careful hair. The glaze caught the light like a thin layer of mourning. "What is that one?" she asked. The voice answered without hesitation. "The one you didn't say." Mara's mouth went dry. "That's not a flavor," she said, trying to sound amused and failing. "It isn't meant to be," the voice replied. "Do you want it?" Her heart started doing something reckless. She should have left. She should have turned around and walked back out into the rational world where a bakery didn't appear in a gap overnight and speak her name like it had always known it. But her hand lifted, slow and involuntary, pointing at the bun. "Yes," she said. The air warmed, as if pleased. A small paper bag slid out from behind the counter and landed softly on the wood, as if placed by an invisible hand. The bag was folded perfectly. Her name was written on it. Mara picked it up. It was warm. Not fresh from the oven warm. Warm like it had been held against someone's chest. She sat at a small table near the window. There were only 2 tables in the whole place, both set with clean napkins and plain ceramic plates. No music, no chatter, only the quiet sound of warmth existing. Mara opened the bag and took the bun out carefully. Up close, it smelled like orange blossom and something deeper, something almost metallic, like the taste of a tear. Her hands trembled, and she hated herself for it. She took one bite. The bakery disappeared. Not in a dramatic way, not like a spell snapping shut. It simply fell away, like a curtain pulled gently aside. She was standing in her own apartment, but it wasn't today's version. The light was different. The air had that late summer heaviness, the kind that clings to skin. The windows were open. The city sounds were louder. And in the kitchen, someone was laughing. Mara's breath caught. Jonah. Not the Jonah from her memories that had started to fade at the edges, softened by grief and repetition. This Jonah was sharp, real, alive in the way only a present moment can be. He was leaning against the counter, barefoot, holding a glass of water, smiling at her like she was the best thing he'd ever seen, like he had all the time in the world. Mara felt her whole body tilt toward him without permission. This wasn't a memory like a picture. This was a memory like a room you could step into. She could smell the dish soap on her hands. She could feel the tiny cut on her thumb she'd gotten from opening a stubborn jar. She could hear the exact rhythm of Jonah's laugh. She opened her mouth, desperate to speak to him. The scene held perfectly still, as if it was waiting. She remembered, suddenly, why it was called unsent. This was the moment she hadn't finished. Jonah's smile shifted, softer now, more vulnerable. He looked like he was about to say something important, something that would change the shape of the rest of their lives. And Mara remembered what she had done instead. She had looked away. She had been afraid. She had swallowed her words like they were poison. The weight of it hit her so hard she swayed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, to a ghost that wasn't a ghost yet in this room. Jonah's eyes flicked toward her mouth, as if he could almost hear her. Mara's throat burned. She tried again, louder, like volume could bridge time. "I'm sorry." The air trembled, and the scene snapped away. Mara was back in the bakery, hand gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles hurt. The bun sat half-eaten on the plate. Her cheeks were wet. She hadn't felt herself start crying. It had just happened, like weather. The voice spoke gently from the back of the room. "It was a good choice." Mara laughed once, sharp and broken. "No, it wasn't." "It was honest," the voice corrected. "That's usually what people mean when they say good, even if they don't like it." Mara wiped her face with the back of her wrist, humiliated by her own softness. "That was real," she said. "That wasn't just remembering." "No," the voice agreed. "It wasn't." Mara stared down at the pastry. "So I can go back," she said, heart racing now in a different way. "I can fix things." The pause this time was longer. Then the voice said, quietly, "You can visit. You can witness. You can understand." Mara lifted her head slowly. "But I can't change it," she said. "You can change what it becomes inside you," the voice replied. "But the past is not for editing. If it were, nobody would ever learn to live." Mara swallowed, furious at how reasonable that sounded. "What about tomorrow?" she asked, eyes sliding back to the menu. "What about that one? Tomorrow bun." The voice softened. "Tomorrow is easier to bruise," it said. "People come here thinking they want to see it. Most of them don't know what they're really asking." Mara's hands clenched. Outside the window, the dawn light had brightened, and the world looked like it was fully awake now. Cars moved. A person walked by without glancing at the bakery at all, as if the building only existed for those who needed it. Mara stared at the pastries again, at the little word cards, at the strange calm of the place. And she realized she wasn't here for sugar. She was here because she was starving. Not for food. For time. For a chance to hold something that was gone. And she had just learned the first rule. This bakery did not sell second chances. It sold truth. Mara told herself she wouldn't go back. She finished the rest of the day in a kind of haze, moving through her hours as if she were underwater. The city felt louder, harsher, as if the bakery had turned the volume down on the world and now everything else was overcompensating. She didn't tell anyone about it. There was no one to tell. Most of the people who knew Jonah belonged to a version of her life that had slowly, politely drifted away after the funeral, after the casseroles, after the well-meaning check-ins that eventually ran out. That night, she dreamed of ovens glowing softly in the dark. At dawn, she was already awake. She stood at her apartment window, watching the street lighten inch by inch, and tried to convince herself that the bakery had been a stress dream, a grief trick, a brain scrambling for comfort. Then she pulled on a sweater and went outside anyway. The storefronts were empty and ordinary again as she turned the corner by the rail spur. Brick, metal shutters, graffiti she recognized. She felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Then she took 3 more steps. The bakery stood exactly where it had before. Same narrow shape, same careful lettering, same fogged windows and amber glow. This time she didn't hesitate. The door warmed under her hand. Inside, everything was the same. Same silence, same warmth, same pastries lined up like they were waiting for her specifically. "Good morning, Mara," the voice said, gentle as ever. "How many times can I come here?" Mara asked immediately, for her courage could drain away. The voice considered. "As many mornings as the door opens for you," it said. "No more." That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. Mara exhaled slowly. "Do other people come here?" "Yes." "Do they come back?" "Some do. Some learn what they need in one visit." "And what happens when the door stops opening?" The warmth in the room shifted, barely perceptible. "Then the bakery moves on." Mara's chest tightened. "Moves on where?" The voice did not answer that. She nodded, as if she'd expected that particular silence. Her eyes drifted back to the display. The word cards had changed. Some were the same. Regret, belonging, forgiveness. Others were new. Last summer, missed call, almost, promise. The day before. Her gaze landed on yesterday tart. It looked unassuming. Flaky crust, dark filling, a dusting of powdered sugar, like the residue of something sweet that had already happened. "What does that one do?" she asked. "It gives you a day," the voice said. "Not a moment, not a scene. A full day as it was." Mara's heart thudded. "Any day." "Yes." She swallowed. "Is it dangerous?" The voice paused. "Only if you confuse remembering with living." That felt like a warning meant for her specifically. Mara nodded once. "I'll take it." The tart arrived on a plate this time, accompanied by a fork, a courtesy, or a kindness. She didn't sit right away. "Can I take it with me?" she asked. "No," the voice said gently. "What happens here stays here." Mara closed her eyes. "Okay." She sat. The first bite was brighter than the bun had been, sharper, like citrus hitting a cut. The bakery dissolved. She was standing in sunlight. Real sunlight, harsh and warm and unapologetic. She was in the grocery store parking lot, squinting, her phone buzzing in her hand. The date on the screen snapped into focus with painful clarity. Yesterday. Not metaphorical yesterday. Not a symbolic one. The actual day before Jonah died. Her breath left her in a rush. She could feel the weight of the grocery bag in her arm. She could smell hot asphalt and oranges. Her car was parked crookedly, just like she remembered. Her phone buzzed again. From Jonah. "Call me when you get this." Her heart slammed. She remembered this moment. She remembered glancing at the text while juggling bags, thinking she'd call him back once she got home. She remembered not doing it. Mara stood perfectly still. The world waited. Cars passed. A cart rattled. A child laughed somewhere. This was the rule she hadn't known about before. The memory didn't move unless she did. Her legs felt weak as she took a step. Then another. She walked to her car, loaded the groceries, sat in the driver's seat. Her hands shook as she held the phone. This wasn't a loop. This wasn't a replay. This was the day. Resumed. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that she was trespassing, that if she pressed it, something terrible would snap shut. But the bakery hadn't forbidden movement. It had forbidden editing. Mara swallowed and pressed call. It rang. Once. Twice. Hey, Jonah's voice answered. Warm and distracted and achingly alive. You okay? Her chest caved in. Yes, she said, and it came out cracked and thin. I'm okay. I'm just calling. He laughed softly. Good. I was starting to think you were avoiding me. I'm not, she said quickly. She stopped herself. This wasn't the moment she'd frozen last time. That came later. This call hadn't been the mistake. The day continued. They talked. About nothing important. About dinner plans. About a stupid video he'd seen. About the weather. The sky overhead was bright blue. Mara memorized it with a kind of desperation that hurt. The day unfolded exactly as she remembered. Not differently. Not better. Just fully. She relived conversations she'd half forgotten. Little annoyances she'd smoothed over in memory. The exact weight of the hours before everything broke. By late afternoon, the dread had settled in her bones. She knew what came next. She stood in her apartment again, sunlight slanting across the floor, Jonah in the kitchen rinsing a mug. This was the moment. The unsent moment. She could feel it approaching like a storm she'd been pretending not to see. Jonah turned to her, mug in hand, that familiar expression on his face. The one that meant he was about to say something careful and important. Ma, he said. Her pulse roared. This time, she didn't look away. This time, she held his gaze and let herself feel how afraid she was of what he might ask for. He inhaled. I've been thinking, he said. About us. About what we're doing. And I don't want to scare you, but... The world seemed to lean forward. This was the edge. If she spoke now, if she said the thing she hadn't said before, the day would split into something new. The bakery's words echoed in her mind. The past is not for editing. Her throat closed. She saw it clearly then. This wasn't a test of courage. It was a test of restraint. Ma shook her head gently. I know, she said, softly. I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Jonah's face fell in exactly the way she remembered. But now she understood something she hadn't before. It wasn't because she was cruel. It was because she was afraid of how much she wanted him. The realization hurt almost as much as the loss. The memory began to blur at the edges. The bakery was pulling her back. Mara was crying when she reappeared at the table. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears sliding down her face like they'd been waiting their turn. The plate was empty. The voice spoke, quiet and steady. "You did well." "No," Mara said, shaking her head. "I didn't fix anything." "You learned what needed fixing," the voice replied. "That's different." Mara wiped her face, exhausted. "So what's the point?" she asked. "If I can see it all again and still lose it?" The warmth of the bakery shifted, like someone settling into a chair. "The point," the voice said, "is that grief often lies to us. It tells us that one moment, one failure, one unsaid thing is the whole story. Yesterday reminds us it was never that simple." Mara stared at the counter. "I loved him," she said. "Yes, and I was scared." "Yes, and both things were true at the same time." "Yes." The answer landed gently and completely. Mara leaned back in her chair, spent. She knew now what yesterday gave. Not comfort. Context. She didn't look at the menu this time. "I want to know about tomorrow," Mara said. The bakery seemed to still itself. "Most people do," the voice said. "What happens if I eat it?" "You will see a possible tomorrow," the voice replied. "Not a promise. Not a guarantee." "And the cost?" There it was. The voice took its time answering. "You will lose something from today." Mara's heart sank. "Lose how?" Gently, the voice said. "But permanently." She closed her eyes. "What kind of something?" "Only something you rely on," the voice replied. "Only something that shapes how you move through the world." Mara laughed weakly. "That's vague." "It's meant to be." Her gaze slid to the tomorrow bun. It looked brighter than the others. Lighter. Like a promise made of air. "What do people usually lose?" she asked. The voice answered softly. "Certainty. Regret. Fear. Attachment. Sometimes hope. Sometimes pain." Mara's breath hitched. She thought of Jonah, of the sharpness of missing him, of how the grief had become a strange companion, painful but familiar. "If I lose my grief," she said slowly, "what happens to my love for him?" The voice did not answer immediately. "Then, love is not the same thing as pain. But many people confuse them." Mara stared at the bun. She realized, with a quiet shock, that part of her was afraid to heal. Not because she didn't want peace, but because she didn't want to betray the version of herself that had survived the loss. She pushed back from the counter. "Not today," she said. The bakery accepted that answer without comment. The next morning, Mara woke later than usual. The light through her window was already well past dawn, the city fully awake, the street loud in its ordinary way. For a few disorienting seconds, she thought she had missed her chance, that the bakery had closed its door and moved on without her. The thought hurt more than she expected. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her own breathing. Grief was still there, heavy, familiar. But something about it felt rearranged, less sharp at the edges, not smaller exactly, but less eager to wound her every time she touched it. She sat up slowly. Today she realized she didn't need to go. That scared her. By the time she pulled on her sweater and stepped outside, the sky had already brightened into full morning. People passed her without a glance. The world didn't pause or hush for significance. She walked anyway. Not because she was desperate, because she wanted to choose. The bakery was there. Same narrow shape, same fogged windows, same amber glow, waiting quietly behind the glass. She stopped across the street and looked at it for a long moment. She understood then that the door wasn't testing her courage. It was testing her timing. Inside, the warmth greeted her, like a held breath, finally released. "Good morning, Mara," the voice said. "Good morning," she replied, steadier than before. The pastries were arranged differently now, not rearranged randomly, but with intention. Some of the word cards were gone. Unsent was missing. Yesterday tart was gone. Only tomorrow bun remained on the far end, glowing faintly in the soft light. Mara approached it slowly. "I think I know what I'm afraid of," she said. The voice waited. "I'm afraid that if I see a future where I'm okay," she continued, "it means I'm supposed to stop missing him. Like grief is the proof that what we had mattered." The warmth deepened, not in approval, not in disagreement, in listening. "And what do you think now?" the voice asked. Mara rested her hands on the counter. "I think maybe grief isn't proof," she said. "Maybe love already did the proving." Silence full and gentle. "You may take the bun," the voice said. "And the cost?" Mara asked. "You will lose the shape of your grief," the voice replied. "Not the memory, not the love, but the way the pain organizes your days." Mara closed her eyes. She pictured waking every morning with the ache already there, like a debt she paid before breakfast. She pictured how grief had given her an identity when everything else had fallen apart. Letting that go felt like stepping off something solid into air. She exhaled. "I'm tired of letting pain be my map," she said. The bun appeared on a plate. Warm, light, almost weightless. The first bite tasted like warmth, without urgency. The bakery softened around her, not vanishing this time, but loosening, like a room dimming its lights. She was standing somewhere unfamiliar. A kitchen, but not her old one. Sunlight through wider windows. Plants on the sill. A calendar on the wall with a date circled, and pen she recognized as her own. She felt calm. Not ecstatic. Not numb. Balanced. She moved through the space slowly, touching things. A mug she didn't remember buying. A jacket slung over a chair. A phone lighting up with a message from Cass. Still on for tonight? Mara smiled, surprised by how natural it felt. She stepped outside. The sky overhead was not dramatic. It was blue, but softly so. The kind of blue that didn't demand attention. A few clouds drifted lazily, imperfect and unremarkable. She walked through her day, work that was engaging, not consuming, conversations that felt present instead of strained, moments of quiet where she thought of Jonah without the sharp stab, without the reflex to apologize for being alive. In the evening, she stood at a window and watched the sun dip. She missed him, but the missing no longer hurt like a punishment. It felt like an echo, important, real, but not all-consuming. The vision faded gently, like the bakery always did. Mara sat back at the small table. The plate was empty. She waited for something dramatic, for dizziness, for loss. Instead, she felt lighter, not relieved, not erased, reoriented. She could still picture Jonah's face, still remember his laugh, still feel the weight of the past, but the pain no longer arranged her mornings for her. The voice spoke softly. "The door will not open for you again," it said. Mara nodded. She had known that already. "Will it open for someone else?" she asked. "Yes." Mara stood. "Then that's enough," she said. She paused at the door, hand resting on the handle one last time. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the magic. For the honest." The handle cooled beneath her palm. She stepped outside. The next morning, the bakery was gone. The narrow gap between the buildings was empty again. Brick, shadow, nothing unusual at all. Mara stopped in front of it anyway. She felt a flicker of grief, not sharp, not panicked, just the natural ache of something meaningful ending. She turned and walked on. As she did, the town woke around her. Coffee shops opened. A bus hissed to a stop. Someone laughed too loudly on the corner. The world kept going. And so did she. Months later, Mara baked. Nothing magical. Nothing enchanted. Bread. Simple loaves. Warm. Imperfect. She found comfort in the routine, the patience it required, the way dough responded to time instead of force. Sometimes, while kneading, she thought of the bakery, of the way it hadn't promised her happiness, only clarity. She missed Jonah still, but she didn't starve anymore. On certain mornings, just at dawn, she paused with flour on her hands and watched the sky change color. Not because she expected a door to appear, but because she had learned something important. Tomorrow is not a place you visit. It's a meal you grow into. And she was learning, slowly, how to taste it. Thank you for sitting with me at the edge of tomorrow. If this story felt warm, or bittersweet, or a little too familiar, I'd love to hear what stayed with you. If you want more quiet magic like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back again. Until next time, be gentle with the time you're still growing into.